All right, today we're diving into something you probably don't see every day, a sixth-grade lesson plan on how to write devotional poetry. It's a really fascinating window into a very specific kind of educational philosophy, one that tries to teach creativity and faith at the exact same time.
And that's really the big question here, isn't it? How do you do that? Is it even possible to structure something as creative as writing a poem in a way that also helps the student grow in their faith? Well, this curriculum says absolutely, and we're about to see exactly how they pull it off.
So their answer starts by tackling what is maybe the biggest hurdle for any writer, staring at that blank page. But instead of just hoping for inspiration to strike, they provide a very guided approach.
And what's so interesting here is how much structure is put in place before a single word of the poem is even written down. This is not about waiting for some muse to show up. Nope. The goal here is to build a solid foundation first, creating a framework that channels all that creative energy in a very specific direction.
This framework is really built around three distinct planning stages. The whole idea is to make all the big creative decisions right at the beginning, so by the time you actually start writing, the path is already laid out for you.
And here is that roadmap. It moves from the big picture, the topic, down to the specific feeling, the tone, and then finally to the actual building blocks, the words themselves. It's kind of like a logical funnel, designed to get rid of the uncertainty and just focus the student's mind.
Okay, so step one is picking a topic. The options are all based in the natural world. The sky, a river, animals, you name it. But here's the critical instruction. All of these things are supposed to be seen as examples of God's creation. So right from the very first choice, the whole creative exercise is anchored in a spiritual framework. Next up, the student chooses the poem's tone. And again, look at these choices. They're very carefully selected. Instead of generic emotions like happy or sad, the options are things like joyful, worshipful, thankful. Every single one steers the poem towards a devotional feeling. And the final planning step is to just brainstorm a list of descriptive words that fit both the topic and the tone you just picked. So think about it. Before even thinking about the first line, the student already has a theme, a mood, and a hand-picked vocabulary. That blank page, suddenly, not so blank anymore. So once that plan is locked in, the lesson moves on to the actual writing and reviewing. And this review process is super important because it uses a simple checklist to reveal the real goals of the whole assignment. This checklist just lays it all out there. It's got the standard poetic stuff, use a metaphor, use some imagery. But that final item is the real tell. Reflect God's beauty or power in creation. That one question ties the entire creative act right back to its spiritual foundation. It's the whole point. And to really reinforce this idea, the lesson includes this. They call it a fluency passage. It's basically a poem about poetry, and it's designed to shift how the student thinks about writing. It suggests that this isn't just an assignment, it's an act where your words rise and heaven listens. It frames creativity as a direct line to the divine.
To ground this whole concept in tradition, the curriculum even points to a biblical example, the poem from the book of Exodus, the one that Moses and the Israelites wrote as an act of praise after they crossed the Red Sea. This helps frame devotional poetry not just as a school exercise, but as a historic act of faith.
And all of this leads up to what the curriculum calls the truth to remember. It just comes right out and says it. In this context, poetry is worship. Every single step we've looked at, from picking a topic to that final review checklist, is designed to make sure the how of writing a poem serves the why of offering praise.
So we've seen the how of the lesson, but the source material is just as clear about the why. So now we're going to zoom out from the nitty-gritty of the lesson plan and look at the guiding philosophy that shapes this entire educational approach.
Education without morality will hurt. That's it. That's the core belief of the people who created this curriculum. It's a really stark, direct statement that frames their whole mission. To them, knowledge that's separated from a moral compass isn't just worthless, it's actually dangerous. And they dig into this by asking a pretty blunt question. What's the point of being smart if you still make bad choices that hurt? This really reveals their ultimate goal for education. It's not just about cramming your head with knowledge. It's about building the kind of character that makes good decisions. Okay, so if education without morality is the big problem, then what's the solution? Well, the curriculum's philosophy points to developing what it calls a spiritual mind. And this idea of a spiritual mind comes directly from Scripture. The philosophy specifically cites the book of Romans, which they interpret as a promise. A spiritual mind leads to life and peace, and that promise becomes the ultimate goal of their entire educational model.
So ultimately, the curriculum presents a very clear fork in the road. One path is the spiritual mind, which they say leads to peace of mind. The other path is education without morality, a path they believe will inevitably lead to hurt. In their view, it's a simple choice, but one with huge consequences.
And this brings us right back to where we started. That poetry lesson, with all of its specific rules and choices, it's suddenly revealed to be way more than just a writing exercise. It's a practical application of a much larger philosophy. It's a tool designed to actively cultivate a spiritual mind in the student.
So, a deep dive into a single 6th grade poetry lesson leaves us with this huge, fundamental question about education itself. This curriculum clearly has its answer. Knowledge and morality have to be woven together. But the question it leaves for the rest of us is, what should the primary goal of education really be? Is it knowledge or is it character? Thanks for watching.